Welcome to another lesson on Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark, and we'll be continuing our studying here in the letter of Paul to the Philippians, looking at chapter 2, starting at verse 25, this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, thy words were found, and I did eat them. And thy word was unto me the joy and rejoicing of my heart. Now, we saw in previous lessons that in verses 19 through 24, Paul talks about Timothy and Timothy's example to the Philippians and how they had known him, and he wants to send Timothy back to them because he treats Timothy as a son, and Timothy and Paul are like-souled, like-minded in their care for the believers in Philippi. But now, in verses 25 through 30, to finish this chapter, Paul talks about Epaphroditus, and in these verses, he's talking about Epaphroditus and a little bit about what he went through and the way that Paul thinks about Epaphroditus. And in verse 25 here, Paul uses four descriptions of Epaphroditus, four different words to describe Epaphroditus. And verse 25 says, yet I supposed it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus. And now he begins to describe Epaphroditus, and he says, my brother, number one, number two, and companion in labor, number three, and fellow soldier, and number four, but your messenger, and he that ministered to my wants. So Paul describes Epaphroditus as his brother, his companion in labor, his fellow soldier, and his messenger. And brother here, of course, means brother in the Lord. Doesn't mean his biological brother. Means his brother in the Lord. Now, the name Epaphroditus means charming. And he definitely was a charming Christian to be willing to leave the church in Philippi and to carry this gift that the Philippian church had for Paul and to take it to Rome while Paul was in prison. So he definitely fulfills the meaning of his name, charming. He was a tremendous man of God, and as we'll see here in the next lesson or two, we'll see the determination by which he lived by. And he says here in verse 25, yet I supposed it necessary. And the Greek context here has the meaning of beyond the shadow of any doubt. Paul considered sending him back to Philippi as indispensable. So when he says here, I suppose it necessary, it's not like Paul is saying, well, I think this would be a good idea. Maybe I should do it. Maybe I shouldn't. No, Paul was determined. The Greek has it that Paul had set his mind and that he was beyond the shadow of a doubt, he would send Epaphroditus back to the Philippian church. He says, and my brother and your messenger. Now, messenger here, Epaphroditus was sent by the Philippians to deliver that gift and to minister to Paul's needs. And that's exactly what he did. He came to Rome and he saw Paul and gave them the Philippians gift of love, gift of encouragement for Paul while he was in prison. and he was there to encourage Paul and to minister to his needs. And then in verse 26, for he longed after you all, and was full of heaviness, because that ye had heard that he had been sick. Now, this Greek word longed is epipatheo, and it's a strengthened form of to long for something. But the preposition epi means it strengthens that word, and it means to long greatly or to long eagerly for something. You just don't long for something, but you're longing eagerly and greatly for something. And Epaphroditus had a strong desire, an eagerness in his heart to go back to Philippi and to be with the believers there. So this is why Paul says, he longed after you all, and he was full of heaviness, because that ye had heard that he had been sick. Full of heaviness here is adaimoneo, and it means to be troubled or to be distressed. So now this Greek word adaimoneo is also used in Jesus when he was feeling sorry, when he was full of sorrow in Gethsemane. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 37, he says, and he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Very heavy. That's where it is. Adaimoneo, very heavy. He was sorrowful and heavy of heart. Same Greek word. And also in Mark chapter 14, verse 33, says the same thing. And he taketh with him Peter and James and John, and began to be sore amazed, and to be what? Very heavy. And to be very heavy. Same Greek word, adaimoneo. It means to be troubled, distressed. Well, Paul uses that same Greek word here to describe Epaphroditus and how he feels about the church in Philippi. Okay? He says, for he longed, he greatly desired, okay, after you all. He wanted to be with them in Philippi. And he was full of heaviness. He was like in this distressing, troubled mind that he was just agitated that he couldn't be with them. He so longed to be with them. Because that ye had heard that he had been sick. Okay? And it says here, Epaphroditus became sick sometime after he left the church in Philippi. He came down with this sickness. Now, we don't know if he got the sickness on his journey to Rome or if he got this sickness after he got to Rome. But somehow Epaphroditus got sick, and he was very sick, okay? And this sickness, because the church in Philippi found out that he was sick, it made Epaphroditus feel distressed and troubled, because he didn't want them to be worried about him, and he didn't want them to know that he was close to death. That's what we're going to see in the next verse, that he was close to death, and he was troubled that they found out about it. And then in verse 27, for indeed he was sick, nigh unto death, but God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. And nigh unto death here, the Greek has it, the Greek word, the prepositions here means that he was beside death. He was next to death, okay? Epaphroditus was so sick that he literally almost died. Paul's not just saying, yeah, well, he was close to death. No. Epaphroditus literally almost died. He was so sick, he literally almost died right there in Rome. And by the grace of God, God healed him, and he was nurtured back to strength again. And when Epaphroditus found out that the church in Philippi knew that he was almost died in Rome, he felt distressed, and he just wanted to go back to them and be with them because he cared for the church and he cared for the people, and he didn't want them to be bothered with his concerns and things. Verse 28, I sent him therefore the more carefully, that when ye see him again, you may rejoice, that I may be the less sorrowful. And he says here, I sent him therefore the more carefully. And carefully here, the Greek word means diligently. It can mean to be careful. It kind of gives you the idea that Paul sent him delicately, but it doesn't mean that. It means diligently. Paul wanted to send Epaphroditus back to them quickly. Okay? After Epaphroditus recovered from his sickness, Paul wanted to hurry up and send him back to Philippi. And it would comfort Paul's heart, but it would also comfort Epaphroditus' heart, and also the people in Philippi, their heart too, towards Paul and towards Epaphroditus. Okay? And so he says, I sent him therefore the more quickly to you, that when you do see him again, you may rejoice. You're rejoicing that he didn't die in Rome, and that I may be the less sorrowful. And Paul said, it even affected me. Epaphroditus coming all this way, giving of his heart. And we're going to see here in the next verse that how much he really gave of his life to go there to Rome. And so Paul's saying, I really want you to know that it's going to calm my heart knowing that I can send him back to you, that your hearts will be comforted when you see Epaphroditus. So next lesson, we're going to get into chapter 2, verses 29 and maybe 30. There's some great truths here, great things about Epaphroditus that we're going to see. All right? So until next lesson, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.